8. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets this evening?
Yes, we have regrets from Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Council, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Knoll.
Your Worship, on agenda item, what number is it? Agenda item number 2, which is the Oak Park Neighborhood Center, I'll be declaring a conflict of interest under our Code of Conduct, not necessarily pecuniary interest, but I do want to declare that my wife is employed as the executive director of that organization, and I've been very actively involved in supporting this project as well. So for the sake of clarity, I'm going to sit out the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. With that, I'll ask for a mover and seconder to resolve into committee of the whole. Councillor Khan, Councillor Elgar, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Your first item tonight is a consent item for the release of agreements in the Creekbank properties on Lyons Lane. And the recommendation is that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the release. How do you wish to proceed? Councillor Adams? Councillor Adams moves the item. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. That brings us to our public hearing items. For public hearing items, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submission to the Town of Oakville in respect of a proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and/or plan of subdivision or condominium, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Town Council to the Ontario Municipal Board and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. And with that, we come to the aforementioned item number 2. And if you give your attention to Tricia Collingwood, she will summarize for us the public meeting recommendation report and zoning bylaw amendment for this matter that you have in your agenda, Council. Trish.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I'm here this evening to present a rezoning application for the Oak Park Neighborhood Center to Council. This is the statutory public meeting on this application, an opportunity for the public to provide you with their comments. This matter is being considered for recommendation in combination with the public meeting. The proponent has submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to permit a private not-for-profit community center within the former residential sales center for the Tribute Communities development in the Uptown Core. The intent of the application is to add the proposed use to the current UCR 1A zoning. The former sales center has an approximate floor area of 301 square meters. There's a small parking lot to the east of the building with an existing access onto Sawgrass Drive. There is also a secondary access to the west of the site that is currently not open. The applicant has not proposed any additions to the existing building. Let me just skip back for a second. The site is located within the Uptown Core at the southwest corner of Roxton Road and Sawgrass Drive. Surrounding uses include medium-density residential and Winfield Park. Oak Park Neighborhood Center is currently operating out of an existing commercial plaza at the corner of 6th Line and River Glen Boulevard. The center has outgrown its existing current location and is seeking to relocate to the vacant sales center. The subject property is located within the Uptown Core, a growth area that is anticipated to accommodate a high level of intensification within the town. The subject lands are designated medium-density residential neighborhood district, and Livable Oakville permits a community center within this designation. As shown on the map above, the lands are zoned UCR 1A under Special Provision 592, permitting a range of residential uses and compatible non-residential uses commonly found in a residential zone, including community centers under the control of a public authority. A site-specific zoning amendment for a privately owned and operated community center is required to accommodate the proposed development. A public information meeting was held on June 14th, 2012. There were 5 residents in attendance. Comments received from the public and through the circulation and review of the application include hours of operation, services offered, parking and access, encroachments, and increased traffic. The nature of the proposed community center is that of a private not-for-profit community neighborhood center. The focus is primarily on the families within the surrounding neighborhood. The center is well placed in relation to its service area, thereby meeting additional location criteria as set out in Livable Oakville for appropriate community center sites. The proposed neighborhood center will operate community-based services and programming such as mom and tot, drop-in groups, arts programs, language-based programs, tutoring, and programs for children with disabilities. The center will operate 7 days a week throughout the daytime and early evening hours. Sorry, I gotta skip. A parking utilization study was conducted on July 18th, 2012. The purpose of the study was to assess the parking requirements associated with the proposed neighborhood center operations. This information was then used to determine the number of parking spaces that would need to be accommodated on the site. The parking study found that the center would require 14 parking spaces throughout a typical day, and that the majority of the visitors to the center either carpooled, used transit, or walked to the center. The proposed parking is consistent with the floor area ratio parking requirement on the C1 commercial parking standard, which they are currently situated in now. The existing parking lot for the former sales center partially encroaches onto Winfield Park as well as the Trans-Canada Pipeline. The town is satisfied that the existing parking lot can be accommodated for the proposed community center's daily needs as illustrated on this slide. It will require the applicant to enter into an encroachment agreement for the continued use of the Winfield Park for the purpose of the parking. Comments from the public included traffic-related concerns as well as for the increase in volumes at specific intersections around the site. In reviewing the materials submitted to support the application, it is the opinion of staff that the traffic generated from the proposed new use will not significantly impact traffic flow in and around the subject site. For the proposed bylaw 2012-073, the zoning amendment proposes a special provision within the UCR1A zone that would permit a privately owned and operated community center use. Regulations were included to reflect the maximum floor area, minimum required parking, and permissions for the existing yard setbacks that are in place now. A copy of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is brought forward with the recommendation report. It is the opinion of staff that the use is compatible with and complementary to the adjacent neighborhood and assists in promoting a socially sustainable community within the uptown core. Staff recommends approval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Questions, Council? Councillor Adams.
Can you clarify the ownership of the area that's encroached on?
Of the ownership of the area, it's the town-owned property, and Trans-Canada Pipeline has an easement that encroaches on it.
And the parking is over the easement of the pipeline as well?
Yes.
So there's two things going on that same piece of
Right.
land? So there's nothing, apart from parking, the only thing that could ever be on top of the pipeline would be parkland, grass?
Right.
Okay. And has the town ever considered, or would the town ever be considering changes to the park that would require us to have that parking land as parkland?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We did go through the Parks Department as well as Development Engineering to assess whether should the need be to remove the encroachment, the parking could be accommodated on site. We do have an alternate parking plan that allows for that.
Okay, and the encroachment agreement would have an out clause for us. Okay, thank you.
Any others? Any members of the public with information for council on this matter? We have a registered delegation, I believe. Mr. Capper. Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the interest of time efficiency, if there are no comments from the the public, I would just like to say that we're here on behalf of the Oak Park Neighborhood Center, and we've read staff's report and the accompanying bylaw, and finally, if Councillor Adams would like me to elaborate on the parking situation, I have a slide that I can show him, but other than that, we're good for this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Capper. So you're familiar with the revised zoning bylaw amendment?
Through you, Your Worship, I am.
And you're fine with it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Adams.
If you have it right there, then I'd be interested in seeing, not that it changes anything.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Adams, this slide shows how the required 14 parking spaces can be achieved on the subject property in the absence of relying on the town-owned lands to the south. So in the event that the town wishes to discontinue any encroachment agreement that they would have with our client, we could, with this parking plan, accommodate the required parking.
Thank you. The councillor seems to be satisfied. Any other members of the public with information for council? We have another delegation from Sawgrass Drive. I'm going to, Prabir Gupta? Am I remotely correct? Am I correct? Yeah. Oh, good. I'm always glad when I get those right. Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Honorable Mayor. I have a small concern regarding that increased traffic, and currently the area is quite calm and quiet, and we're afraid the increased traffic and gathering of people will disturb the serenity of the area. So that is basically my concern.
Let me see if I understood that correctly. So your concern is that there might be an impact from traffic, is that?
Traffic and people's gathering in the area.
Sorry?
The gathering of a lot of people around that area in the parking area.
So traffic and people?
Yeah.
Or pedestrian and vehicle,
Pedestrian,
perhaps,
yeah.
traffic.
That's right, yeah.
Any other concerns?
No, I do not have any other concerns.
And did you hear the staff report that they had considered that question, I guess in response to someone bringing it up at the public meeting?
Actually, I missed that meeting.
And what our staff reported was that having looked at it, staff are of the opinion that there would be no significant negative impact. Tricia, did you want to add anything to that?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. We did take a good look at, with the parking utilization study and the trip generation, and we did not see a substantial increase that would warrant any changes to the neighborhood, to the surrounding roads.
All right. Thank you, Trish. Tricia, do you know if the building is presently vacant or if it's in use?
It is vacant.
It's vacant, it's not in use. Okay, well, we've heard your concern. Staff have certainly heard it, and they are advising us that there won't be a negative impact. I trust that it'll turn out that way, and you'll wind up relieved and happy.
Okay, I accept the recommendation.
But
Thanks very much.
Thank you for coming. Any other members of the public with information for council? Thank you. Then I'll look to council for a decision. Councillor Grant?
Thank you. Before I make the motion, I just want to point out as well that we're looking at Taunton Road opening up very shortly, and once that does, a lot of the traffic on Sawgrass will be relieved and moved there, so it should be a little bit quieter in the area, which is something else to look forward to for that. And on that note, I would be happy to move the staff recommendation, including the resolution that we received this afternoon.
All right, so the councillor is moving that Planning Services Department Report PD 5912 dated July 24, 2012, and any comments from the public with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment be received. And 2, that zoning bylaw amendment 2012-73 be passed as revised. And 3, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute an encroachment agreement to the satisfaction of the town solicitor, authorizing an encroachment onto Winfield Parkette for parking purposes substantially in accordance with the preferred parking layout, S2, attached as Appendix E to the report from the Planning Services Department dated July 24th, 2012.
Thank you, yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? That does carry. Thank you. Now that brings us to the public hearing item number 3. And if you'll give your attention to Gabe Charles, we will take up the matter of the public meeting and recommendation report for the zoning bylaw amendment for 171 Old Upper Middle Road. Mr. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a statutory public meeting for an application by Mark and Tatiana Bezin for a property at 171 Old Upper Middle Road. The staff are also providing a recommendation on the proposal this evening. The subject property is located southeast of the intersection of Neagawa Boulevard and Upper Middle Road, or more closely towards northwest of Old Upper Middle Road and Oxford Avenue. The property currently has a house on the easterly half or side of the property. The rezoning proposal before you is to rezone the property to a residential zone from the current agricultural zone. The property is designated as low-density residential in the livable Oakville plan, and the proposal does comply with the official plan. In essence, what this proposal would do would bring the zoning of the property in line with what the official plan designation is. As I noted, the property is currently zoned agricultural, and the proposal to rezone would be similar to surrounding residential zone classification. To the southwest is the RO2 zone, which is what the applicant is looking to apply to the subject property. There are no modifications being proposed to the parent RO2 zone. There is the addition of an H provision in this case, which is to ensure that the town-owned lands along Old Upper Middle Road will, portion of those lands will merge with the subject property to ensure that the property has full conformity with the RO2 zone regulations, and which will grant the property frontage on a public highway. So just to illustrate, this is how the zoning would look on the property, would change the area in red to an RO2. And what that would, in essence, provide is the ability that should the applicant wish, or the owner wish in the future, to seek consent to sever the property, the RO2 zone provisions would apply to what would become a new lot fabric in this area. So with that, staff do recommend approval of this application, as the resolution is illustrated in the staff report. If there are any questions, be pleased to answer those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. Are there questions? Councillor Bird.
We'll go back there. So what we're effectively doing is also rezoning the surrounding lands, which are agricultural as well, to an RO2 zoning. You've got so we'll have R12 and an RO2 zoning, because you're creating a potential 2 lots surrounded by what's the remaining lot? Is that open space, or is that potential development?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, the area, as you can see right now, is all agricultural. So there's an A, which denotes the agricultural zone classification just to the left of the R12.
Right, I'm talking about the lands on the right, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
The area circled or in red is the subject property, which would, through this proposal, rezone it to an RO2 zone.
Right.
If the applicant wishes to, in the future, due to the size of this property, seek consent to sever the property, effectively creating 2 lots out of 1, they would be able to do that. The RO2 would apply to both properties, and the zone requirements, provisions in the RO2 would apply to both properties, and both properties would thereby be able to meet those provisions. Okay.
The property immediately to the left of this property, it looks like that, is that already severed? Because what you're doing looks like the 2 lots that potentially be created here do not look to me dissimilar to the 2 lots that are existing between the RO2 lands and the R12 lands.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a fair comment. The existing situation currently is that the properties along Old Upper Middle, which currently look like this, have an easement to allow them access onto Old Upper Middle Road. So what in essence is happening is we're rezoning a portion of the town-owned lands. There was several years ago, council had noted or approved that these lands were surplus and could be sold. So as part of this exercise, the applicant would look to gain a portion of those lands and thereby merge them with the subject property. So in essence, yes, they're of a similar size to the properties between the R12 and what would now become an R02.
No, the properties now between the, after we do this, the properties between the R12 and the R02 are now still effectively landlocked?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they retain the agricultural zoning, and they're not necessarily landlocked because there is an easement which does allow them access onto Old Upper Middle Road.
Right.
Through the subsequent in-zone process, we'd be looking to clean up situations like this where the use doesn't necessarily jive with the zoning.
Okay, so we, at the end of the day, what we could look for on this portion, that's the portion to the left of 4 RO2 lots. Now, what about the piece of property to the right of this? What goes on there? It looks like it's kind of unusual, a triangular piece. Is that agricultural too?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. To the east, to the right of the subject property, it is currently has an agricultural zone. That triangular piece that you're looking at just adjacent to the vet clinic that's existing is town owned.
Okay, that's town-owned land, and would they again be seeking frontage onto Old Upper Middle Road, or would that an easement through to Oxford?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they currently have an easement agreement with the municipality for access onto Old Upper Middle Road. Whether or not that is continued in the future remains to be seen.
Okay, so we'd have effectively maybe 5 RO2 lots at the end of the day, maybe 6 maximum, once the whole area is redeveloped.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's feasible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bird, and thank you, Mr. Charles, for a good answer. And any other questions? Any members of the public with information for council on this matter? Then I'll look to council for a decision. Councillor Elgar, it's, or Councillor Knoll, sorry. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. I'll move the staff recommendation contained on page 3.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is adopted and carried. So that brings us to our discussion items tonight. And the first one is the notice of intention to demolish at 1181 Lakeshore Road East. And the recommendation is that the property be removed from the Heritage Register to allow for the demolition of all structures on the property, subject to the conditions in the agenda. And to clarify for the public, the register means the list of properties of possible interest for designation as heritage properties. It does not mean that the property has been designated already. So, Council, what's your wish on this matter? We have a presentation if you want it. If you need more information than you have in your report from Carolyn Van Slichtenhorst. Otherwise, I'll look for a motion. Councillor Duddick.
Motion to approve.
Councillor Duddick moves the staff recommendation. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that carries. The next discussion item is also a notice of intention to demolish. And this is 1005 Dundas Street East. And basically, Council, it's the same proposition as before. Councillor Adams.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is carried. And then we have another notice from 497 Esplanade. And I'll look to you for a decision, Council. Councillor Giddings. Councillor Giddings moves approval of item number 6. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. That brings us to the Heritage Register update, some housekeeping items. 306 Lakeshore West, 3308 Lakeshore West, and 1354 Burnhamthorpe Road West. And the recommendation is that these properties be removed from the Register of Properties of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest. Councillor Johnston.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries as well. Now, Council, you have a confidential item and the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes. And what is your, Councillor Dudek, thank you.
I'll be pleased to move both of them.
All right. Discussion? Any need to separate or go into camera? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Both items are carried. And I now need a motion to rise and report to Council. Councillor Johnston, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? I rise and report that Council has met in Committee of the Whole and has made recommendations on consent item 1, public hearing items 2 and 3, discussion items 4, 5, 6, and 7, confidential discussion item C1, and advisory committee minutes item 8, as noted by the clerk. We need a mover and seconder for this report. Councillor Elgar, and did I see Councillor Grant's hand there? Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? The report is adopted. Council, is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Seeing none, could we have a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws? Councillor Johnston, Councillor Adams, thank you. Councillor Knoll?
Could I ask for a separate vote on bylaw 2012-073?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Not even on my list. I better move. I'll move to this list.
That's just my, that was my previously declared conflict.
And a good catch. All right, so we will have, the first vote will be on bylaws 68, 71, and 77, and Councillor Knoll will be able to participate in that. All in favor? Opposed? Those bylaws are adopted. And now, Councillor Knoll, having declared a conflict, he will sit back from this vote, and this one is on bylaw 73. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Madam Clerk?
As revised.
Yes, as revised. It says that right here. Oh, but I needed to say it. Okay, I've said it.
Thank you.
That completes our agenda. It's been great working with you. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and we are adjourned.